Hey, you've reached Channel Creative Writing Prose. I'm Robin, and this video will be about committing to a piece. It sounds simple, but it is simple. But simple doesn't guarantee easy. Let's look at factors to consider when it comes to committing to a piece. First, the size of the piece. A piece might be one longer book or a series of smaller books. But when it comes to the size of the piece, it's going to either way add up to, well, if it's going to be a larger piece overall, it's going to add up to a lot of time, usually, depending on how fast you write, of course. Once you've figured out how large the piece is going to be, you'll probably also by this stage have the majority of your notes together and things like that, because you will plan, right? And that way you will be able to calculate approximately how long it's going to take you to complete the piece. A lot of other creative, a piece for you might take 1 year to write one book, or for you to complete one book that's of a certain size, it may take 1 year. And when I say complete, I mean just the first draft. And that's something you're going to have to be very realistic about. And even once you've calculated how long it's going to take you to write that first draft, I would say aim for a slightly higher word count every day, or every day you write, so you won't have to worry as much about falling behind when you're several months into it, or however long it's going to be. A lot of more experienced, more serious creative writers will have multiple pieces in the works at different stages. That, if it works for them, if it works for you, that's great. If it doesn't, then just focus on one piece, whatever is more efficient for you. One additional piece of advice I have for you when it comes to planning is plan until you feel physically sick. Like, you get up in the morning, you have a hot drink, and you power up your computer, or if you're doing it by hand, you open up the folder or file where you have all your notes, and you look at them and you think to yourself, I physically cannot stand doing this. I did this when it came to planning when it came to planning Do and Switches Past, and then I took a couple of days break from planning, and then I was back into it. Once you get to that place where you're physically sick from planning, or you feel physically sick from planning, you know you've done a pretty sufficient amount. The final step for committing to a piece is actually committing to writing the thing, or at least that's one of the more final steps. Committing to writing commit to writing a certain time each day, or at least Monday to Friday, or if you're writing on the weekends, then Saturday, Sunday, or however your schedule is going to be, but commit to at least on a certain day, you know, okay, it's this day, it's this time, I'm writing. Some newbie writers, once they think they've finished the first draft, they think they're actually done. This isn't true. There, of course, are several editing stages that need to be done. Especially when you're very new to writing, you'll find reading over your work, you'll have a lot more errors and inconsistencies. I mentioned deadlines earlier, and that's for a very specific reason. Even if you don't have a publishing schedule or anything like that, you haven't been told by a publishing company that you've already written for that they want more of this, therefore you're writing with a deadline in mind, a very specific deadline in mind, you still might want to set a deadline so the project actually does get complete. Also, make sure you set deadlines for every stage, at least as much as you can control it. Obviously, at least as much as you control it, you can't really set a deadline for publication if you want to do the traditional publishing route. Yeah, set deadlines for what you can control. As I mentioned before, or as I should have mentioned before, life does happen. That's why it's good to write a bit more than the minimum writing the minimum amount of words each day, so you can be a bit ahead, so you can not have to worry if, say, you get sick or you're in a coma or something happens which prevents you from keeping on track with your writing goal. Another question you should ask yourself when it comes to writing or committing to a piece, will the profit be worth it if you're writing for money? And of course, the biggest thing, which we all have, but we're all losing, is time. Is this piece going to be worth the time to do? Also, is it the right time to do this piece? And finally, my last question for you to ask yourself when it comes to committing to a piece is more of a psychological one. I know all of these were kind of psychological, but this one's going to be more psychological. And it's, are you afraid of failure or are you afraid of success? I believe that both of these, if you fear failure or you fear success, you probably actually fear both. A lot of people tend to, and that's because people are afraid of change. They're afraid of results. They're afraid of the unknown. If the answer is yes to you either fearing failure or success, or possibly even both, committing to a piece of writing can be very difficult for you, especially in the fiction world. You're going to have to find a way to face the fear if you want to complete those projects. So yeah, that's it for this video. I hope it was useful for you. Feel free to like this video and share it, and comment down below, of course, any of your experiences or insecurities about writing and committing to pieces of writing. And feel free to check me out on Twitter and Facebook, links in the description. Keep being creative.